Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is the US Futures Weekly Chart Analysis for the week ending 2nd of April 2026. The first chart is the US dollar index futures as usual. You can see the market's continuing to consolidate within this range here. Price did spend much of the week, and remember it was a shortened trading week for the Easter holidays. It spent much of the week testing for supply. It did test the highs of the range briefly and just closed comfortably back within the range. This is the market consolidating in here. And it's actually looking more like it might make an attempt to push higher at some point. For a shortened trading week, volume was pretty good, a little above the average. So there was a fair bit of activity in the market for the week, when you especially consider it was a shortened trading week. This market's looking stronger than weaker at this point in time. The next chart is the E-mini S&P. This is S&P 500 index futures, and they did find some support at this more important level here, which comes right back across over here. You can see how this market respects this level. Price did find some support for a shortened trading week. Volume was still about average, so activity was pretty high. Prices pushed up to this level, actually to this level. This week, I expect early in the week it'll test for supply in here. And then if supply is found to be low, this market may attempt to continue higher. If supply is drawn out, you may find that there's a deeper test for supply during the week. Sort of like this. These are daily bars on a weekly chart. But this market has found some modest support at this relatively important trading level. This is US Treasury 10-year note futures, and they found some support this week as well. Price responded positively up to the next level. It attempted to go higher, but there was some supply drawn out. It wasn't overwhelming supply, but there was enough supply to push price back down to this next higher level here. It's closed just a fraction above it. You've got the level here, you've got the level above that, through there like that, and that's exactly where prices moved in between the two. Volume was reduced for the shortened trading week, just a little below the average, which is more or less where you would expect it to be. So there's been a little bit of demand emerge at this level, but sufficient supply to hold it back and cause a mid-bar close. So there's a bit of uncertainty in this market. I expect there'll be a test for supply early, similar to what we said on the E-mini, test for supply early like this, and then a response depending on how much supply is actually drawn out. This is copper price futures. They'd already found some support last week, and that support continued this week. Price pushed up to the next higher level, issued a minor challenge to it. There was a test for supply earlier in the week, as you normally see or often see. Price then pushed higher and then faded back down to the next higher level on shortened trading week volume. It might have actually been slightly below average volume. That's probably showing you that selling pressure has eased more than anything. Price pushed up, challenged the next higher level, and then faded back down to the important level here at week's end. You may find the market then pulls back, tests for supply, and if supply is low, attempts to push higher in response. Gold price futures. Gold price futures responded positively to the potential support found in the previous bar. There was a test for supply early in the week, below the previous bar's close, as many of these markets do early in the week. Price then pushed higher in response, as you'd expect, and then it's faded lower and back to this level, the next higher level, by week's end. Volume was clearly holiday affected. It was well below the average, so it was probably on low volume anyway. once again suggesting that selling pressure has perhaps eased in these markets. Those who were going to sell have possibly done so for the most part, unless there's further reasons to adjust position sizing, and prices just faded back to the important level. You'll probably find that there's a test for supply early in the week again next week, just below the previous bar's close, with a relatively narrow spread, and then price will respond depending on how much supply is drawn out. If supply is found to be low, there'll be an attempt to push higher, and if supply is found to be ongoing or persistent, you'll probably find the market will pull back a little more deeply and attempt to remove that supply. Silver price futures. Silver price futures also responded relatively positively to the previous bar's inferred strength, modest strength. Price did test for supply below the previous bar's close. It pushed up to that level and closed just back below it on very low volume, well below the average and lower than all the previous bars. It was a shortened trading week, so it was going to be modest volume anyway, but that's pretty low volume for this market, and you'll probably find that volatility has eased to some degree now. Similar to the previous two charts, you would expect some form of testing for supply early next week, brief and shallow pullback and recovery, and then the market will respond depending on how much supply is actually drawn out. Like crude price futures, after a couple of weeks of consolidation, test for supply and a bit of a shakeout, the market's attempted to break out above this line showing the 2022 June highs. Price did test for supply below the previous bar's close, then accelerated higher, still within the range of this widespread up bar, but it's responded positively to the period of consolidation in here, these two bars in particular. Prices pushed up. I'll have to go searching for the next higher level now, but that's a good strong up bar, a good response to the previous two bars which were consolidating below the important level, and it's a good strong bar standing up tall and proud with a positive close. Volume was about average for a shortened trading week. That was pretty good volume. That was a very positive response in this chart. You'll probably find a test for supply almost certainly early next week. And then, as we've said for the previous three charts, market will then respond depending on how much supply is drawn out. Into the currencies now. This is the Euro-US dollar currency pair, and the market's consolidating sideways to a large degree. You can see the range in here, holding on to this level as best it can. Volume was reduced and slightly below the average, but holiday affected, obviously. So the market's just trading sideways, as I expect the pound is too. Pound's a little bit weaker by the looks, closing right at the lows of that down bar there. That's where the market will break down from. If it breaks down there, it's probably coming back to this level almost certainly to test that for strength. You can see where the market's been attempting to consolidate in there. This bar is threatening to break down. Hasn't done so yet, but it's threatening to break down. So price is possibly coming back to this level down here. This is the Japanese yen currency futures. They're attempting to hold on at this newly established level in here. It's not looking particularly strong. It looks like a tentative up bar at best, closing well off its highs and slightly below mid-bar. It's held on to the lows of the previous bar, at least for this week. Volume was holiday affected below the average. The market's actually looking like it's going to fade lower like this. At least it's looking like that at this point in time. It's certainly not looking strong. Aussie dollar currency futures, which pulled back to the next lower level last week, to this level. It broke below that bar's low, pulled back to here, and it's attempting to hold on to this level. Volume was only slightly below the average, so activity was still fairly strong in this market, and prices attempting to hold on to this level. It's a longer term level through here. If it can't hold on there, it's got this little zone below to pull back to. But at this point in time, it looks like it's making a decent attempt to hold on above this longer term level here. This is Bitcoin futures. Bitcoin futures continue to hold on within that zone. Price was threatening to break down last week and break below this level. It didn't do so. It's held on. It's still not looking particularly strong, but it's holding on in this zone, and that's the important thing at this point in time. Holding on in here. I drew that rectangle many weeks ago now. The price has traded within it for quite some time, as we expected, similar to what went on over here. The market's attempting to consolidate. It's attempting to avoid breaking down further and trying to build up some strength for a push higher in the future. It's not clear at this point in time the market's ready to do so, but it does appear that the market is making a reasonable attempt to hold on within this zone. It did look last week very threatening towards the downside. That might have just been testing the market's mettle at this level because it didn't break down. It's attempted to hold on. Wasn't particularly strong with a mid-bar close. Volume was reduced and obviously holiday affected with a shortened trading week, but it's attempting to hold on at the lows of this range. It does continue to look vulnerable, but it's attempting to hold on, and we'll see how it goes. Just back to the US dollar index futures quickly. You can see price is making a decent attempt to consolidate in here. Volume was pretty good for a shortened trading week, above the average. I would expect an early test for supply in here. Relatively shallow pullback and recovery, and then an attempt to push higher if supply is found to be low. And if there is supply continuing to be drawn out, I expect the market will continue to consolidate in this level. Okay. Thanks for your time. Back again next week. See ya.